For decades, audiences have tirelessly dissected, quoted, and celebrated Mel Brooks's cinematic masterpiece, Blazing Saddles. They have lauded its fearless satirical takedowns of racism, its relentless barrage of anachronistic gags, and its legendary fourth-wall-breaking finale that completely obliterated the boundaries of traditional filmmaking. Yet, despite the exhaustive cultural autopsy performed on this 1974 classic, there remains a singular, profound detail that has consistently eluded even the most dedicated cinephiles. It is not a deleted scene hidden in a vault, nor is it a secret cameo buried in the background of a crowded shot. It is not some fabricated behind-the-scenes feud or a misunderstood piece of dialogue. It is something far more elemental, resting right there on the screen, hiding in plain sight. It is delivered with such masterful subtlety that its true nature has been entirely overlooked. Gene Wilder, the man responsible for it, finally confirmed its existence years later. And once you understand what he was actually doing, it fundamentally alters your perception of the entire film. The ultimate secret of Blazing Saddles is that the most outrageously chaotic comedy of its era only succeeded because of the quietest, most tragically grounded performance in the room. To truly understand how this hidden dynamic came to be, one must look at the absolute calamity that preceded Gene Wilder's involvement. When Mel Brooks first began assembling the pieces of Blazing Saddles, the role of the Waco Kid, the drunken, legendary gunslinger who becomes Sheriff Bart's unlikely deputy, was not written with Wilder in mind. The part had already been formally offered to and accepted by Gig Young. Young was a seasoned, highly respected Hollywood leading man, an Oscar winner who possessed a certain rugged dignity that seemed, on paper, perfectly suited for the washed-up gunslinger archetype. But the transition from paper to reality was disastrous. On the very first day of principal photography, it became immediately apparent that something was deeply wrong. Young arrived on set exhibiting severe physical distress. He was profusely sweating, experiencing visible tremors, and struggling to articulate his dialogue. Initially, some members of the crew assumed he was employing an extreme, almost dangerous method-acting technique to portray a severe hangover. The grim reality, however, was that Young was suffering from acute, life-threatening alcohol withdrawal. Before mid-morning had passed, he collapsed entirely, rendering him completely unable to perform. Production was immediately brought to a screeching halt. The studio executives were panic-stricken. The financial clock was ticking loudly, the crew was standing idle, and the film's director was suddenly without a crucial co-lead. In the midst of this high-stakes crisis, Mel Brooks bypassed the traditional Hollywood machinery of frantic casting calls and agent negotiations. Instead, he made a deeply personal phone call to Gene Wilder. The two men had forged a profound creative bond a few years prior on the set of The Producers, a collaboration that resulted in an Academy Award nomination for Wilder. Brooks knew intimately what Wilder was capable of, but more importantly, he knew Wilder's character. What happened next is a testament to the nature of their relationship. According to Brooks, Wilder did not ask to read the script. He did not inquire about his salary, his billing, or even a basic character description. He simply listened to the desperation in his friend's voice, agreed to help, and boarded a plane the very next morning. This was not a calculated career maneuver designed to boost his stardom. It was a lifeline thrown to a collaborative partner in a moment of absolute need. Wilder arrived on the set of Blazing Saddles jet-lagged, entirely unprepared in terms of rehearsal, and stepping into a role originally tailored for a completely different physical and vocal presence. Yet, the almost mythic speed with which Wilder commandeered the character is staggering. Within hours of arriving, he was no longer Gene Wilder playing a part. He was inhabiting the worn-out boots of the Waco Kid as if he had been living in them for a lifetime. The genius of what Wilder did next, the secret he later revealed about his approach, was rooted in a conscious, deliberate rejection of the film's own inherent madness. Before he had even stood in front of the camera, Wilder established a singular, non-negotiable condition for his performance. He flatly refused to play the Waco Kid for laughs. In a movie that was explicitly designed to be an escalating symphony of slapstick, vulgarity, and absurdist satire, Wilder insisted on delivering a performance of profound restraint, imbuing his character with an undercurrent of mournful tragedy. This was not an actor trying to subtly steal scenes through reactionary mugging. It was a masterclass in understanding the mechanics of comedic contrast. Wilder recognized that if every single character in the film was operating at a fever pitch of absurdity, the audience would eventually suffer from sensory fatigue and the satire would collapse into pure, exhausting noise. By refusing to push his lines, by actively resisting the urge to exaggerate his facial expressions or inflate his delivery, Wilder became the necessary anchor. He leaned heavily into stillness, transforming the Waco Kid into a ghostly remnant of the Old West, a man who was burned out, deeply reflective, and strangely dignified amidst the surrounding insanity. This artistic choice is most brilliantly illuminated during the Waco Kid's introduction in the town jail. When Sheriff Bart first encounters him, the kid is slouched on a bunk, barely conscious, surrounded by empty bottles. When he demonstrates his infamous shaky hands, the scene could have easily devolved into a cheap, cartoonish gag about drunkenness. Instead, Wilder played the moment with a visceral weariness that bordered on the tragic. He delivered his monologue about being the fastest drawer in the world not with boastful irony, but with the heavy, suffocating weight of genuine regret. It was a confession rather than a joke. Wilder's subtle suggestion that the Waco Kid was suffering from what we now understand as post-traumatic stress disorder, haunted by the violence he had witnessed and perpetrated, elevated the character from a mere trope to a fully realized human being. Mel Brooks later freely admitted that the emotional intelligence Wilder brought to the role was never explicitly written into the screenplay. Brooks had envisioned a funny drunk. Wilder gave him a broken man trying to numb his psychological scars. By playing the absolute reality of the character's pain, Wilder made the comedy surrounding him land with exponentially more force. His stillness became the eye of the hurricane, allowing the winds of Brooks's satire to blow even harder. The delicate balancing act Wilder performed was made even more remarkable by the ghostly presence of another comedic giant who never actually appeared on screen, Richard Pryor. Long before cameras rolled, Pryor was intricately woven into the fabric of Blazing Saddles. He was not only the original choice to play Sheriff Bart, but he was also a crucial co-writer, responsible for injecting the script with its unapologetic, razor-sharp commentary on American racial dynamics. However, Warner Brothers executives, terrified by Pryor's reputation for unpredictable behavior and his well-documented struggles with substance abuse, unequivocally refused to insure him for the leading role. The studio's cowardice robbed audiences of what would have been a historic on-screen pairing. Cleavon Little stepped in and delivered a phenomenal, charismatic performance, but the underlying rhythmic DNA of the dialogue remained unmistakably Pryor's. Gene Wilder was acutely aware of this invisible dynamic. Having worked with Pryor in later years on films like Silver Streak and Stir Crazy, Wilder understood the explosive, confrontational energy Pryor brought to a room. In Blazing Saddles, Wilder had to act as a reactive counterweight to an energy that wasn't physically present. He had to internalize the space that Pryor would have occupied, ensuring that the Waco Kid's quiet melancholy provided the perfect foil to the Pryor-esque sharpness embedded in the script. It is a fascinating, unseen layer of the film's chemistry. Wilder was effectively playing straight man to a phantom. This capacity for grounded realism did not just serve Wilder on screen. It became the defining characteristic of his behavior behind the camera as well. The production of Blazing Saddles was anything but a relaxed environment. Brooks was a ball of frantic, chaotic energy, constantly pushing boundaries, encouraging improvisation, and battling the studio for every single controversial joke. The atmosphere was highly charged, with long hours and immense pressure to deliver a film that studio executives fundamentally did not understand. Amidst this whirlwind, Gene Wilder emerged as an unexpected pillar of stability. Crew members and co-stars alike recall that Wilder rarely raised his voice. He never demanded attention or threw the kind of creative tantrums that often plague difficult productions. Instead, he exuded a quiet, calming aura that subtly stabilized the set. Between takes, he became an unofficial mentor to less experienced actors, offering gentle, precise guidance on timing and delivery without ever adopting a condescending tone. His years of rigorous classical stage training had taught him the profound value of discipline and rhythm, and he freely shared that ethos with those around him. If Mel Brooks was the unhinged engine driving the film forward, Gene Wilder was the shock absorber ensuring the vehicle didn't shake itself apart. It was within this environment of controlled chaos that another cinematic landmark was quietly born. During the grueling downtime on the set of Blazing Saddles, while the crew was resetting lights, Brooks was arguing with executives, Wilder began to idly converse with his director about an idea that had been rattling around in his imagination. He posed a simple question to Brooks. What if the grandson of Victor Frankenstein, trying desperately to escape the stigma of his infamous family name, was inevitably drawn back to the ancestral castle? At first, Brooks, entirely consumed by the logistical nightmares of finishing Blazing Saddles, brushed the idea off. But Wilder, displaying a quiet but immovable persistence, believed deeply in the concept. He went away and drafted a comprehensive screenplay on his own time, without any financial guarantee or contractual obligation, simply because the creative itch demanded to be scratched. When Brooks finally read the draft, he was utterly captivated. That stray thought, born in the dusty, tension-filled margins of a Western spoof set, would eventually become Young Frankenstein, widely regarded as one of the greatest horror comedies ever committed to film. This pivot marked a monumental evolution in Wilder's career, transitioning him from a brilliant interpreter of other people's visions to a formidable creative architect in his own right. Yet, while Wilder was quietly drafting a future classic in his off hours, his immediate focus remained on protecting the film he was currently making. The battles between Mel Brooks and Warner Brothers were fierce and unrelenting. The studio was appalled by the film's relentless use of racial slurs, its scatological humor, and its blatant mockery of American institutional racism. Executives flooded the production with memos demanding sweeping script changes, the softening of language, and the complete removal of key scenes that they felt would alienate mainstream audiences. While Brooks was the primary general in this war of artistic integrity, Gene Wilder was his most trusted advisor and unyielding supporter. Wilder's defense of the material was characteristically quiet but utterly immovable. In private meetings, he urged Brooks to hold the line, arguing vehemently that sanitizing the film would completely destroy its core purpose. Wilder understood intrinsically that effective satire must be allowed to make the audience deeply uncomfortable. To expose the absurdity and ugliness of racism, the film had to drag those ugly realities into the harsh light of day. Stripping away the offensive language would not make the film more palatable. It would merely make it toothless.